You do not break trench warfare. That is the rule every commander has learned by 1916. You do not cross open ground under machine gun fire. You do not charge barbed wire thicker than a forest hedge. And you certainly do not force German stormtroopers from dugouts designed to survive artillery that can flatten cities. For 3 years, that rule has been ironclad. The German Empire dominates the battlefield with one devastating truth: the defender always wins. Their machine guns sweep no man's land at 450 rounds per minute. Their interlocking trenches, miles deep, swallow entire offensives. Their stormtrooper counterattacks, perfected in 1917, carve up Allied units that dare push too far. Everyone agrees on one thing: nothing can break this stalemate. But in 1917, a weapon the experts mocked as a lumbering metal failure is about to overturn the very logic of the Western Front. And at the center of it stands Captain Philip Henry Johnson, 26 years old, wiry, bespectacled, an engineer before the war, now commanding a 28-ton steel beast no one expects to work. He has trained in secret fields across southern England. He has watched these machines overheat, stall, collapse into craters, and trap crews inside clouds of exhaust. He has seen headlines calling them useless, suicide boxes, mechanical follies. But he also knows something the generals are just beginning to suspect. If one of these machines crosses no man's land intact, even one, the war changes. It is the fall of 1917. Germany is preparing its next wave of stormtrooper offensives. British infantry are exhausted, losses already in the hundreds of thousands. And every commander quietly fears the same thing: if Germany breaks through again, Britain may not recover. So the question is no longer whether the old rules will hold. It is whether any weapon exists that can rewrite them. And that is why Captain Johnson and his crew are about to be sent straight into the teeth of the German Hindenburg Line, to prove that the machine everyone calls worthless might be the only thing capable of ending Germany's deadliest tactic. Because on November 20, 1917, at Cambrai, the world will watch the unthinkable: a tank breakthrough. A real one. And you are about to see it from inside the steel furnace where it happens. Captain Philip Johnson is not a traditional warrior. He is not chosen for bravery or lineage, but for something far rarer on the Western Front. He understands machines. Born in 1891 in Yorkshire, trained as a mechanical engineer, he joined the tank corps when most soldiers laughed at the very idea of armored warfare. During early tests of the Mark I tank, he watched machines stall after 200 yards, sink into mud, or break down under their own weight. Many early crews suffered carbon monoxide poisoning. Others burned alive when fuel tanks ruptured. But Johnson kept showing up, not because he believed tanks were ready, but because he believed they could be. By 1917, the British Army has created a newer model, the Mark IV, still slow, still clumsy, still prone to failure. But now armored with 12 steel plating, armed with 2 6-pounder guns, able to carry a crew of 8. Even so, to the generals at the front, it remains a joke. Germany ridicules it, newspapers mock it, and German stormtroopers, elite infantry who use speed, surprise, and infiltration tactics, know they can outmaneuver anything this slow. But the tank corps sees something the rest do not. Trench warfare is a problem of physics, and physics, unlike generals, can be beaten with engineering. A tank does not fear barbed wire. A tank does not care about machine gun nests. A tank does not duck when shellfire lands 20 yards away. If it works, the enemy line collapses. If it fails, the crew dies inside a steel coffin. The stakes at Cambrai could not be higher. British High Command wants a breakthrough before German stormtrooper offensives begin again in 1918. They need to prove to both sides that mobility is possible, that morale can be restored, that the stalemate is not permanent. So Johnson's battalion, 6th Battalion Tank Corps, receives its orders. 126 tanks will advance across a 6-mile front. No creeping barrage. No preliminary bombardment. Just tanks rolling out of mist at dawn. The plan is radical. The risks enormous. The margin for error nearly non-existent. As Johnson climbs into his tank, C-37, he feels the heat of the engine already building. The air reeks of petrol. Condensation sweats down steel walls. His crew, gunners Private Hale and Corporal Briggs, driver Walter Higgins, and 4 loaders look at him with tight, nervous eyes. They know the statistics. In training, nearly half the tanks fail before reaching battle. In combat, the number climbs even higher. Outside, the infantry of the 51st Highland Division wait for the machines to clear a path. Those men know something too. If the tanks fail, they die. As dawn approaches, the ground rumbles. Rows of tanks brace in silence. Engines growl like caged animals hungry for release. Then the whistle blows. Johnson gives the order, forward, and the tank lurches into history. The moment Captain Johnson's tank surges forward, every rule of the Western Front is put on trial. Inside C-37, the noise is deafening. The Daimler engine screams inches behind him. Fumes sting his eyes. The temperature climbs past 100 degrees. Metal rattles with every jolt, but the tank moves, and that alone feels miraculous. Outside, the first German machine gun bursts snap across the tank's hull, sharp, metallic pings that echo through the steel interior. Each strike sounds like a hammer blow next to Johnson's ear. The crew pauses, waiting to see if the armor holds. It does. For the first time in their lives, they are immune to the weapon that has slaughtered millions. Johnson orders Higgins to increase speed, which means crawling forward at barely 3.5 miles per hour. The tank grinds over mud, crushing barbed wire buried 3 feet deep. The sound is like bones snapping under boot. To their left and right, other Mark IVs push ahead, 28 tons of iron tearing the impossible apart. Wire that stopped hundreds of thousands of men simply vanishes beneath steel tracks. 3 minutes into the assault, Johnson sees what will decide the entire battle. A German strongpoint, codenamed Oldenburg, erupts in muzzle flashes. It houses at least 4 MG-08 machine guns, each capable of 500 rounds per minute. This position has broken every British attack for 2 years. Now Johnson heads straight for it. He shouts, "Gunners ready." Corporal Briggs swings the right side 6-pounder gun into position. The loader slams in a shell. The gunner's cheeks are already blackened by exhaust and cordite. Range, 150 yards. Johnson orders, "Fire!" The cannon blasts, shaking the tank like it's been hit by a train. The shell streaks across no man's land and detonates inside the German bunker. Dirt, timber, and bodies blast upward in a cloud of debris. Machine gun fire from Oldenburg stutters, hesitates, then stops. A bunker built to withstand weeks of bombardment has fallen in 30 seconds. The infantry behind C-37 witness something they have never seen: momentum, forward movement, hope. Johnson pushes deeper. German riflemen scramble out of trenches, some firing wildly, others frozen in disbelief at the sight of armored beasts crawling out of the morning mist. Several try to run. Others crouch behind sandbags that cannot stop a tank's advance. Johnson keeps going. The tank reaches the German front trench, a ditch nearly 10 feet wide. The crew holds its breath as the machine's nose dips downward. For a moment, C-37 tilts dangerously, 20 degrees, 30-35. If it slides in, they are done. No escape, no rescue, just a steel tomb in enemy lines. But the rear of the tank tilts up, tracks dig in, and C-37 lurches upward again, climbing out of the trench like a metal animal dragging itself over prey. As the tank clears the far side, Private Hale spots a second strongpoint on their flank. 2 machine guns, 20 infantry, 1 anti-tank rifle crew. Johnson reacts instantly. He pivots the tank a grinding, screeching turn that rattles loose every bolt in the hull. German bullets hammer the armor. 1 ricochets inside the sponson, sparks bursting like fireworks. The anti-tank rifle fires. The shot slams into the Mark IV's port side. The steel dents inward, dangerously close to penetration. Hale shouts, "Hit again and we're breached." Johnson orders maximum speed, which is barely faster than a marching pace but enough to throw off the enemy aim. The next anti-tank shot misses by inches. Briggs fires again. The 6-pounder roars. The German rifle team disappears in a fireball. The infantry position breaks. Survivors flee. And this is when Germany realizes something terrifying. Their deadliest tactic, fixed-line machine gun dominance, is useless against a tank. For 3 years, they have relied on a simple formula: wire stops the men. Machine guns kill the men. Artillery finishes the rest. But the tank ignores all three. C-37 continues its advance toward the second trench system, the infamous Hindenburg Line. Designed with interlocking firing positions, deep dugouts, and concrete bunkers, it is considered unbreakable. Johnson is about to test that assumption. As they approach, the German guns shift. A field artillery battery opens fire from 600 yards. A shell lands 20 yards away, spraying dirt and metal fragments. The crew flinches instinctively. Another shell lands closer. The tank shakes violently. Bolt heads vibrate, dust falls from every seam. Johnson must decide, push on and risk a direct hit, or pull back and abandon the assault. There is no decision. He commands, "Forward, straight into them." C-37 charges. Artillery crews scramble. Some try to reposition their guns. Others panic and fire over open sights, deadly at close range, but only if they can hit. Johnson counts the distance: 500 yards, 400, 300. Another shell lands, this one 10 yards off the hull. The crew feels the shockwave in their teeth, but the guns keep firing. 200 yards. The German gunners hesitate. They are not trained for this. They expect infantry assaults, not steel monsters closing the distance like armored predators. 150 yards. Hale yells over the engine noise. "Sir, left gun is ready," Johnson shouts. "Take them." Briggs fires. The blast obliterates one artillery crew. Another gun crew flees, abandoning their piece. The remaining gunners fire one last desperate shot. It whistles overhead. C-37 rolls over their position. The tank crushes a field gun under its tracks, metal shrieking under 28 tons of pressure. The gunners scream and scatter. The Hindenburg Line has been punctured. Behind the tank, thousands of British infantry surge forward. Not slowly, not cautiously, but at a pace no soldier has ever experienced on this front. A breakthrough is happening, a real one. The thing every general swore could not exist. Johnson doesn't see the whole battlefield, but he feels the shift, the fear in the enemy fire, the energy in the infantry behind them, the collapse of the German plan. But he also knows something dangerous. Breakthroughs invite counterattacks, and the Germans always counterattack. Before the next push, before the next disaster, a critical truth emerges. The tank has changed the balance of power, but it is not invincible. What happens next will prove that the tank's greatest enemy is not German fire, but the tank's own machinery. A revelation is coming that will reshape armored warfare forever. If you find this kind of forgotten history as fascinating as we do, we'd be honored if you'd hit that subscribe button. We believe these stories of innovation and courage deserve to be told. And by subscribing, you help us ensure they aren't forgotten. Johnson wipes sweat from his eyes. The next challenge is already approaching. Captain Johnson pushes deeper into the Hindenburg Line, but inside C-37 the air has turned deadly. The engine, mounted directly behind the crew, burns hotter than any fire they trained for. Temperatures climb past 120 degrees. Sweat pours off every man. The smell of petrol fumes mixes with cordite and hot metal. Private Hale coughs violently. The ventilation is barely functioning. The tank is becoming an oven. But outside, the Germans are regrouping. From trenches on higher ground, stormtrooper units begin converging on the British advance. These are not ordinary infantry. They are elite assault troops trained to exploit weaknesses and carve up breakthroughs before they widen. And they have a weapon tailor-made to kill tanks. Bundled stick grenades, 7, sometimes 9 wired together, capable of blowing tracks off in an instant. Johnson knows this. He also knows tanks cannot outrun stormtroopers. The only option is to strike first. He orders Higgins, push to grid point red 5, full speed. Full speed, of course, means the pace of a tired horse, but momentum is everything. C-37 barrels forward as best it can, tracks grinding. The metal hull screams with every turn. Vibrations ripple through their boots. The tank feels like it might shake itself apart. Ahead lies a fortified trench holding at least 40 German soldiers. Behind that trench, more machine gun nests beginning to recover from the shock of the tank assault. Briggs loads a high explosive shell. The loader slams the breech. Hale braces himself against the bulkhead. Range, 100 yards. Stormtroopers sprint into position, some carrying grenade bundles the size of footballs. Others take aim with armor-piercing K bullets designed to penetrate steel at close range. Johnson shouts, "Fire!" Briggs unleashes the 6-pounder. The explosion rips apart the trench lip. German bodies and wooden planks blast upward, but the assault continues. Stormtroopers rush through smoke, weaving in and out of craters. 60 yards. 50, 40. Hale's Lewis gun chatters through the firing port. Brass casings clatter around his feet. Stormtroopers fall, but the survivors close the distance. 30 yards. Grenade bundles ready. Johnson has seconds. He orders, "Turn hard right." The tank lurches, grinding sideways. Tracks churn up mud, sweeping some approaching Germans off their feet. A grenade bundle detonates just behind the left track, exploding with a crack that rattles every rib inside the hull. The tank jerks. Smoke pours inside. Higgins screams, tracks holding, barely, but more stormtroopers are fanning out. Johnson knows what comes next, the upper deck attack, a tactic designed after Germans first encountered tanks in 1916. Stormtroopers attempt to climb onto the tank, pull open hatches, and drop grenades inside. In a Mark IV, that is instant death. Johnson yells, "All guns suppress the trench." Briggs and Hale fire non-stop. Shell casings pile knee-deep. The interior deafens them. Every shot feels like someone is kicking the tank with a god's strength. They rip holes into the trench system. One bunker collapses, another erupts in flames. The German attack stalls, then breaks. Stormtroopers retreat in small groups, dragging wounded comrades. Grenade bundles litter the ground, unexploded or torn apart by shrapnel, but Johnson cannot celebrate. A new sound rises beneath them, grinding, scraping, shifting weight. Higgins looks at him, face pale. "Sir." Something's wrong in the gearbox. The words every tank commander fears. The tank shakes again. A metallic scream echoes through the hull. Speed drops from a crawl to a shuddering crawl. C-37 is crippled. Johnson checks his map. They have advanced nearly a mile deeper than any British force has ever gone on the Western Front without collapsing. But that means they are alone. Infantry are still catching up. Other tanks are scattered. Some have already broken down or been destroyed. The tank halts. Not because of German fire, because of its own machinery. This is the terrifying irony of early armored warfare. The tank that can break the German line cannot reliably move through it. Hale whispers, "We're dead men if they counterattack." Johnson knows he's right. Still, there is one tactic left. A crippled tank can become a fortress. He orders the men to conserve ammunition, rotate firing arcs, and stay silent. From outside, C-37 now appears dead. Just another steel carcass cooling on the field. It is a trick, a dangerous one. Minutes pass, then 20 minutes, then nearly an hour. The battlefield noise shifts. German units attempt to reform. Artillery changes aim. Machine gun nests ray open. But they avoid the seemingly dead tank. And in that hour, something extraordinary happens. British infantry, thousands of them, pour through the gap that tanks like C-37 created. They bypass German strongpoints entirely. They move deep into trench networks the British Army once believed impenetrable. The battlefield is transforming from static to fluid. For the first time since 1914, mobility exists, but danger hasn't passed. At 12:40 p.m., a German field gun crew spots C-37 from 400 yards away. They wheel their 77 gun into direct fire position. Johnson sees them. They see him. Both sides know whoever fires first wins. He roars, "Gunners ready!" Briggs loads frantically. Hale braces to spot the impact. Higgins grips the control levers even though the tank cannot move. Range counts down in Johnson's mind: 400 yards, 350, 300. The German gun adjusts elevation: 250, 251. Johnson locks eyes on the target through the slit: 150. The German crew primes their shell: 100. Johnson shouts, "Fire!" The 6-pounder bellows. The shell streaks across the field and hits dead center. The German gun vanishes in a bright, violent flash. Bodies thrown, carriage splintered. C-37 lives a little longer, but that shot drains nearly the last of their energy. The crew is dehydrated, exhausted, half poisoned by fumes, rattled by hours of concussive blasts. And their tank, it will not move again. Johnson removes his helmet, wipes sweat from his brow, and listens. In the distance, he hears something he never expected on this front: British cavalry, galloping, fast. For the first time in 3 years, horses can charge because tanks have shattered the wire. The battlefield has changed. But at Cambrai, this moment is only the beginning. Because soon the Germans will throw their full weight into a massive counterstroke, a storm of artillery and infantry designed to crush everything the tanks achieved. And Captain Johnson and his stranded crew are still deep behind enemy lines. The real test is moments away. For 3 hours, Captain Johnson and his crew listen to the ground tremble beneath them. The German counterstroke has begun. Artillery, massed in batteries of 12 and 16 guns, unleashes more than 20,000 shells in the first hour alone. Not in creeping barrages, not in carefully plotted patterns, but in roaring, continuous waves meant to erase the British advance entirely. The sky darkens. Dirt rains down in sheets. Every explosion feels like the crack of the earth itself opening. Inside C-37, the steel hull amplifies each concussion. Dust falls from rivets. The floor shudders. Hale clamps his hands over his ears as a near miss slams the tank sideways. But the Mark IV holds. For now. Johnson crouches by the viewing slit. Through drifting smoke, he sees the full scale of the German response. Hundreds of stormtroopers emerging from trenches in coordinated waves. Machine gun units repositioning with deadly efficiency. Signals officers sprinting with flags and lamps to redirect fire. And behind them, fresh divisions moving to crush the breach. Germany has absorbed the shock of tanks. Now comes the answer they have spent years perfecting: bring overwhelming force to bear before the enemy stabilizes. The British infantry around the tank brace themselves. Shouts echo through trenches once empty. Rifle fire cracks in long, desperate bursts. Still the German wave comes. C-37 cannot move, but it can still kill. Johnson orders, "On my mark, open fire." He waits, lets the Germans come closer, closer still. At 120 yards, he gives the command. Briggs fires the 6-pounder. Hale sweeps the Lewis gun. The tank erupts in thunder. The first rank of stormtroopers falls, but more step over them. A stick grenade bundle lands 6 feet from the hull. The explosion hides the tank in a cloud of dust. Shrapnel rattles off the armor like hail. Higgins coughs as fumes swirl around their boots. "We can't keep this up forever," he shouts. Johnson knows, but their orders are clear: hold until relieved. If they break, the entire sector collapses. German mortars walk fire across no man's land in stepping patterns. One blast detonates so close it dents the starboard sponson inward. Briggs is thrown off balance, striking the steel wall with his shoulder. He grimaces but gets back to his feet. Still firing. Outside, British infantry begin to fall back in patches. Some platoons are wiped out entirely. Others cling to shell holes and broken trenches, firing desperately. The tanks, those still moving, withdraw to resupply or repair. Most are gone. C-37 is alone. A German officer stands on a ridge signaling forward units with a white cloth. 4 Maxim guns open up at once, raking the British retreat. The stormtroopers advance in bounding movements. Johnson shifts his firing arc. Target that ridge. The tank's gun booms. The officer disappears in a cloud of debris, but the pressure is unrelenting. 2 more German platoons rush from the right flank, trying to bypass the tank and collapse the British positions behind it. Johnson's view slit flashes with muzzle fire. Bullets crack against the hull in angry bursts. A German anti-tank rifle crew goes prone 90 yards away. Hale yells, "Left, they're sighting us." Johnson rotates the gun. Too slow. A K round strikes the hull, a sharp metallic scream. The interior echoes with pressure and sparks. The armor holds, but a rivet flies loose and grazes Briggs's cheek, leaving a line of blood. He wipes it away and loads another round. But then Johnson sees the true danger. Behind the anti-tank rifle, a 77 field gun is being manhandled into position by 7 soldiers. He remembers Cambrai's first hours. Tanks died quickly to direct artillery fire. 1 shell, just 1, would tear C-37 apart. He orders Hale, "All suppressive fire, front arc. Higgins, brace for shock." The tank unleashes everything left. Lewis drums empty. Shells detonate one after another, but the Germans do not stop. The field gun crew adjusts elevation. 400 yards, 350, 300. Johnson counts the seconds until death. And then, faint but unmistakable, a whistle blows behind them. Reinforcements. From the smoke, the 36th Brigade charges forward, bayonets fixed, rifles roaring. Fresh battalions swarm into the line, stabilizing what had seemed lost minutes before. The German assault hesitates, wavers, breaks. Some stormtroopers continue fighting. Others pull back to reorganize. The field gun crew retreats before finishing their setup. The pressure lifts just enough for Johnson to exhale. C-37 has survived the worst artillery the Germans could muster. It has held ground long after tanks were expected to fail. It has anchored an entire defensive line without moving a single foot. But now comes the revelation that will define the tank's legacy. Germany's counterattack is enormous, and still, their elite infantry cannot overcome a single immobilized tank without risking catastrophic losses. The myth of German trench invincibility is breaking, and the German command knows it. Deep behind their lines, officers study reports with growing alarm. British tanks crush barbed wire that once stopped armies. They neutralized bunkers in minutes instead of hours. They forced stormtroopers to fight at disadvantages they had never trained for. They turned immovable terrain into open avenues. And the biggest shock of all, even when disabled, even when stranded, a tank still altered the battlefield around it. By nightfall, the British gained more ground at Cambrai in hours than they had in months of previous offensives. But this victory is fragile and temporary, because Germany, recognizing the threat, begins developing new anti-tank tactics overnight. New guns, new grenades, new armor-piercing rounds. The tank has rewritten the rules. Germany will now rewrite theirs. Yet there is one thing they cannot undo. The tank has proven that trench warfare can be broken. That breakthrough is possible. That mobility has returned to modern war. That Germany's deadliest tactic, the unbreakable trench system, has met its match. Captain Johnson and his crew sit in the dark hull of C-37, rationing water, listening to distant fire. They have survived one of the most violent battles of the war. But the story does not end here. Because the ripple effect of Cambrai will not be understood until months later, when tanks return, not as curiosities, not as experiments, but as decisive weapons in the great offensives of 1918. This worthless machine is about to end the dominance of the trench forever. Night descends on Cambrai like a curtain lowered over a theater still echoing with violence. Inside C-37, Captain Philip Johnson and his exhausted crew wait for relief. Their tank, punctured, overheated, and immobile, has survived the full fury of a German counterattack. They have done their part, but the legacy of what they accomplished is only beginning. For 3 years, Germany's deadliest tactic was simple and devastating. Let the Allies bleed themselves dry against wire machine guns and dugouts. Then unleash stormtrooper counterattacks to annihilate whatever remained. That tactic died at Cambrai. The tank killed it, not perfectly, not cleanly, not without cost, but undeniably. Because when the reports reach German high command that night, they are stunned by one line repeated across units. The British tanks made the trench system unusable. Not breached, unusable. Wire, flattened, machine gun nests, erased. Concrete fortifications, flanked and bypassed. Stormtroopers, forced into defensive positions they were never trained for. Even the immobilized tanks like C-37 became anchors capable of halting entire regiments. Germany had never seen anything like it, and that shock carries far beyond Cambrai. In early 1918, Germany launches its massive spring offensives, Operation Michael and the series that follow, designed to shatter the Allied lines before American forces arrive in significant numbers. At first, the Stormtroopers succeed. They break through stunned British formations and penetrate deeper than ever before. But something is different. The Allies no longer believe the trench is invincible. Because they remember Cambrai, and so does Germany. Every mile the Stormtroopers gain, they fear the same response: tanks. And when the counteroffensives begin, at Amiens, at Albert, at the Scarpe River, the fear becomes reality. On August 8, 1918, more than 500 Allied tanks attack at dawn. The German front, once the most formidable fortress system ever constructed, collapses in hours. Ludendorff calls it the Black Day of the German army. Morale breaks. Desertions spike. German commanders write in their diaries that their men no longer have the will to resist tanks. The weapon mocked as worthless in 1916 has become the terror of 1918. And Cambrai was the proof of concept. It was the place where the old rule died. You do not break trench warfare. And a new rule was born. You do if you bring a tank. What the world didn't know in 1917 was that Cambrai wasn't a failure. It was a test, a preview, a rehearsal for the end of the war. And at the center of it was an unremarkable young engineer named Philip Johnson, who had believed in tanks long before most generals even understood what they were. Now the world would learn why that mattered. The morning after Cambrai, British infantry finally reach C-37. The tank is scarred, pitted with shrapnel, its sponsons dented, its paint scorched black. It looks like a metal animal that has survived a firestorm. The crew climbs out, limping, coughing, eyes red from fumes. They are filthy, exhausted, dehydrated, but they are alive. Captain Johnson leads them out of the smoking battlefield and into the historical record. After Cambrai, Johnson continues serving with the Tank Corps until war's end. He becomes one of the officers who helps refine armored tactics for 1918, tactics used in the 100 Days offensive that shatters Germany's capacity to resist. Private Hale survives the war and returns to Birmingham, spending the rest of his life working in factories. Corporal Briggs Ray enlists for a time, but eventually returns to Yorkshire as a machinist. Walter Higgins becomes one of the earliest instructors in armored driving techniques, teaching the next generation how to maneuver steel giants across the battlefield. All of them, ordinary men who fought inside extraordinary machines, fade quietly back into civilian life, but their legacy does not. Because the tank they fought in, the Mark IV, the so-called worthless machine, changed the world. It did not win Cambrai alone. It did not end the war immediately, but it forced the German Empire to confront a terrifying truth. Their deadliest tactic had an expiration date, and that date was November 20, 1917. The tank opened the door to mobile warfare. It set the stage for the armored divisions of World War II. It transformed how armies attack, defend, maneuver, and think. Every modern armored vehicle, from the Sherman to the Panther, from the T-34 to the Abrams, traces its lineage back to those first lumbering beasts that crawled across Cambrai, and it traces back to the men inside them. Men like Johnson, Hale, Briggs, Higgins, and the hundreds of others who fought inside roaring steel furnaces to prove a point history had ignored. Innovation comes before belief. Belief comes before victory. And tanks, once mocked as impractical experiments, became the symbol of a world that would never again accept the tyranny of trench warfare. To this day, historians still debate Cambrai. Was it a British success squandered? A tactical marvel undercut by poor planning? A temporary breach that could not be held? But none of those debates touched the heart of the story. Cambrai proved that Germany's strongest advantage could be broken. Cambrai proved that courage and machinery could rewrite the battlefield. Cambrai proved that a weapon the world dismissed could end a form of warfare the world despised. And the men of the Tank Corps, many no older than 25, were the ones who made that truth undeniable. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. Every click tells the algorithm this piece of history is worth remembering. We're dedicated to rescuing these forgotten stories from the archives. If you want to join us on this mission, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment with your city or state and tell us if someone in your family served. Thank you for ensuring that Captain Philip Henry Johnson and the men of the 6th Battalion, Tank Corps do not disappear into silence. They deserve to be remembered.